Hi, Robin. I got to put my cheater readers on here, guys. I can't see anything. So I was just getting ready for tonight. I was actually just watching Alicia's story. Trying to get my computer up here. Okay, here we go. How is everybody? Hi, Holly. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Marcia. I'm so glad you remembered, Robin. Okay, so there's my laptop. I got that set up. Here's my work table. You guys know me. Here's my notes. I got to be prepared or I'll get lost. How is everybody? Robin, me too. Oh, me too. You're glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, Color Cottage. Okay, what we're going to be doing tonight, let's start. Like I said in my live earlier, what we're going to do is I had a lot of questions about how I go about planning my colors and my textures in my geodes. And by textures, I mean not just your stones and your crystals and your rocks, but also your glitters. Glitter is a texture. Arguably, mica is a texture. I look at mica more as a finish than a texture. Before we get started, I want a sneak peek on this canvas here. This canvas is prepped for a collaboration I have coming up. Not going to tell you with who yet, but I will be doing this canvas on a live as well. And you can see it's purple and gold and white, and it's going to be yummy and gorgeous and pretty. So let's start out with laying out your geode. Can you guys see that okay? Okay. When you're laying out your geode, or when I lay out my geodes, I use the rule of 3. And if you've never had any formal art training or photography training, the rule of 3 is simply to lay out whatever you're working on in a grid pattern, in a 3x3 grid, so that you've got 3 across and obviously 3 up. And then your center of attention or your focal point should never go in the center. Now, obviously, that doesn't apply if you are doing a portrait, but for purposes like we do with our geodes, you always want to off-center your focal point someplace other than the center of your grid. So obviously, it would go like here, or here, here, or here. So pretty simple. So I'm going to demonstrate that with some of my geodes. This one, let me turn this off. There we go. This is probably one of my most favorite geodes. And if I take this, and I'm trying to hold my camera, and we apply the rule of 3 to this piece, roughly. And it's not going to be perfect, guys. I'm working with one hand here. But if we apply it here, you can see that my focal point, which is going to be the center of your geode, is here. So obviously it applies. Same with, let me get this one out of the way. Same with this one. Obviously, you divide it in 3 this way, 3 this way. The center is here, also the focal point. So that even applies to something when you get to a big canvas like this one. So it's not in a corner, but it's also not in the center. It's in the bottom third of the canvas. So that's how I lay out my pieces. It's no different than if you're doing photography, like I said, other than like a portrait. Okay, and I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, and when it comes to colors, I personally limit myself to 3 to 5 colors. I just feel like if you get too many colors, it gets too busy, especially in a geode. Now, tonight I'm talking specifically about geodes. This doesn't apply to other resin art or other art in general. But you can see with this one, this is basically 3 colors. 3 colors? 3 colors. So you've got the white, the teal, and the gold. And the teal, you've got 2 different shades of teal, but it's still teal. And when I lay these out, I try to stick to that. And I also stick to similar tones. Okay? So if you're doing a geode, you wouldn't want to take like this geode and instead of the white, put, say, a fluorescent green. That would mess it up. And a perfect example of this, I have shown this geode before. This is one of my very early pieces. It was a complete fail. And that is this one. And what is wrong with this geode? One of the things, there's many, many things wrong with this geode, by the way. But one of the big things that's wrong with this is the tone. If you look at this purple, the tone of this purple, and the tone of this teal, they're 2 different tones. The teal is too bright for this. And it's just jarring and it's ugly. Okay? So when you're working, excuse me, when you're working with combinations in different tones, you want to keep them the same tones. You don't want to put a bright color with dusty colors. Like this mauve has a lot of very soft colors. So you want to keep all of your colors soft. It wouldn't look nearly as pretty if, again, it had like a bright green thrown in there. You could put a green in this geode, but you'd want to keep the same hue or the same tonal quality as the pinks. Here is a really good demonstration of this. Here. This is a geode. I printed this off. I have Tam's permission. I contacted her and talked to her. We're Insta friends. But if you look at this, all of her tones have the same quality to them. And the same with this one. She's got different colors in there. There's actually 5 colors in each one of these geodes. But her tonal qualities are all similar, so it works. These look a lot better online. If you haven't seen them, there's the credit at the top in big letters. It says credit. It's Tam's Creative Corner. That's here on YouTube. She's also on, or here on Instagram. She's also on YouTube. And she has her own website, so you can get a really good look at these. And I try to choose a neutral. And a neutral isn't necessarily white, black, gray, or brown. You can choose any color for a neutral. And a really great example of that is, we all know Mrs. Colorberry. Go look at her geodes. A lot of times her actual neutral is a dark purple or a dark, dark blue. And it's beautiful. It looks amazing. Another good example of a neutral is this one. And of course, this is Agnes Rupp. We all know her. And right there at the top is our credit to Aga Art Studios. And obviously her neutral here is white. And she uses a lot of it. And it's stunning. This is probably one of my favorite pieces of all time. I absolutely love it. So there's that. And then how to combine your colors. A lot of mine, I'm looking around here. A lot of mine I stick to just a few colors. And how I decide to do that is I look at it and I try to decide where my negative space is going to be. And negative space, and I had to look this up because I know it, but I didn't know how to define it properly. It is defined as the space that surrounds an object in an image and helps to define the boundaries. And it brings balance to your composition. So in this particular piece, this part here is the main part of my geode. And then you've got some up in this corner and there, and again over in this corner. So my negative space that defines those sections is this dark blue. That is my negative space. You don't have to use a dark color to define your negative spaces. You can use any color you want. In this particular piece, what defines this section from the main section is this strip right here. Okay? And up here, this would be my negative space. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a dark color or a specific kind of color, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like here in Tammy's, when you look at this band of gold is actually her negative space. That defines this part of her composition from what's going on in the upper corners. And in this one, again, she has used the gold band as her negative space. But those are important to define your composition, and it gives it balance. And let's go back to this one. Now imagine if that dark blue wasn't up there and you had this big heavy center down here and nothing at the top. If that dark blue wasn't there, when you hung this on the wall, this picture would forever look like it was tipping towards you because it would not have that balance. So this is our focal point. This is our negative space, and it both defines the main part of our composition and it balances the bottom with the top. So, does everybody follow that? Does that make sense to everyone? Oh, here's all this stuff. I gotta scroll up. Sorry guys, my thing wasn't scrolling. There's so many of here I didn't see. Hi guys, sorry. My screen wasn't scrolling for me. Okay, so everybody understands that. And that's, I don't have any formal art training. I have a degree in marketing. That's what my degree is in. Over the years, I have done a lot of composition for, well, we're in a very digital world. So a lot of photographs, a lot of building of a lot of advertising and things like that. So I had to learn this stuff. So the next thing I want to move into is your use of textures. And like I said in the very beginning, your textures are your stones, your crystals, your glitter, your crushed glass. Anything that adds the look of a texture to your geode is a texture. And sorry. No, I'm not getting a cold. I'm not allowing myself. I'm just not going to allow myself. So your use of textures is really important in your pieces, but you want to be careful. And I've got another piece here to show you. And there's my beautiful teal. And I love this geode. It was probably about 10 in that I finally figured it out. And this was really the first good one I ever did. Here is one. This was the second geode I did. I was really hoping to get that purple and teal down. And this one, the color composition is a lot better. But look at the textures, guys. It's ugly. And it's ugly because there's too much going on. You've got clear stones here, and then you've got glitter and more stones and more stones and more glitter and more glitter and more stones and more glitter and more stones and more glitter and more glass and more. It's too much. So, and I am not a less is more kind of person at all, but this is just gaudy. It just is. So this is a really good example of, had I left half of that texture out, it would have been twice as nice. But again, I keep my ugly ones to remind me what I did wrong. And how much texture you use is really up to you. If you like that overdone look, just go for it. I personally don't like it in mine. And I try to limit my textures. And I limit how I use my textures. And that's important. And what I mean by that is I really love when the glitter sticks up off of the painting. But I don't do that all the time because it gets to be too much. So here in the center, I've got my crushed glass. And then here I've got my glitter, but it's flat. And then I've got some stones, and then I give the eye a rest. And then I've got some glitter, and then there's another rest. And see how it's not all backed up to each other. I also like to, you crack me up, Susan. Thanks, Robin. I appreciate that, dear. Love you too. I also like to break up my textures. Here I've got some glitter, and then I've got some crushed glass, and then glitter above it. But all of those things help make up your composition. So does anybody have, hi Sky, does anybody have questions? Somehow I thought that would take a lot longer. One of the things, if you put too much texture, you don't notice anything, and your eye doesn't have a place to rest and take it all in like this. There's really no place there for your eye to just take a break already. And that's one of the things. And let's go back to Tams here. She's a master of using textures. She just is. She's just, everybody knows she's my hero. But you can see she's used very few textures in this. Her negative space here has a lot of texture, and she's got her textures here. But other than that, it's very sparsely textured, and it looks amazing. And this one has more texture. What's the easiest way to fix imperfections like hair? Sand it off and do it again. Sorry. I know that's the answer nobody wants to hear. Hi, Alicia. Thank you. That was your first one. This one was your first one, Tammy? That's amazing, because that's gorgeous. And she's used a lot more texture here, guys, but you can see she's left places for the eye to rest, because you have a place here that's more, I don't want to say plain. The blue one was your first one. This one was your first one. Yeah, that's beautiful. It just is. And this one is a lot busier. But because I limited the kinds of textures that I used, I got away with it. And by kinds of textures that I used, I mean most of the texture on this, if you really stop and look at it, most of it is glitter. Okay? Whereas on this one, you've got crystals, you've got crushed glass, you've got a second kind of crushed glass, you've got glitter, you've got yet a third kind of crushed glass, you've got stones, you've got another different kind of glitter, different texture glitter, and it's just too much. And on this one, there's a lot of texture, but it's all similar, because all of these golds are the same thing. Okay, this line here, this white line, is a mica, so it's shimmery, but it's really not textured. And in this one, I really cut the textures down. The only two textures in that one, you've got a little bit of glitter here, and then the mirror glass and the crushed stones. And then the rest of it are all the crushed glass. All the rest of the texture in it is one kind of texture. My bad ones are, no, they're not gorgeous, girl. They are so ugly. I keep them because they're ugly. And here's another bad example of texture. Look at that mess. It's just, oh God. And I actually do keep those on purpose. I've thought about pouring over them. Are there any questions? Which one is your favorite, Sky? The pink one? Oh, thank you, Tammy. I've had a lot of practice with composition. And did I explain it well? Does everybody understand the composition aspect to this? Because that is really, really important in your art. Hi, Kathy. Yes, Robin, I limit the number of textures I use, typically to 3. I try not to do more than 3 separate textures. In this one, excuse me, in this one I have 3. This is all the crushed glass, the glitter, and then up here in the corner I have some white stones, just a tiny little bit. See, and same with this one. I think I have 4 textures in this one. I've got the crushed glass, and then I've got the glitter, crushed glass. Oh, I've actually only got 2 in this one. I just have glitter and crushed glass in this one. So yes, I limit my textures, and that avoids mistakes. Hang on here. Sorry, guys. That avoids mistakes like this, where there's so many going on. I would say limit it to 3, or if you have a big piece, you can get away with more different textures. If you're working on like this piece and the pink piece are both 11 by 14s, I would limit those to 3, glitter and 2 others. If you're working on a big piece like this one, you could get away with more textures in this one. I didn't put more in it simply because I wanted a lot of negative space in this one. So that my negative space is all, obviously it's all this white. Why do I limit it to 3? I limit it because if you get too many textures, it gets too busy. And that's especially true on a small canvas like this one. There's just too much going on. It's just too busy. There's too many different things that are trying to get the attention of your eye, and your eye doesn't settle on anything. Whereas this one, your eye clearly goes to that gold glitter. That's what you notice first. Any other questions? Let's look. I'm going to cover the lens so I don't make you dizzy for just a second here. This piece, this is the tray that I'm working on. It's almost finished. I think I'm going to do 2 more coats of resin. This glass is almost under. Do you pour twice? I see a lot of people do twice. I'm learning. I do at least 2 coats. Typically, I do 4 or more because I am strange like that. Thanks, Tammy. This one is going to be available. Hi, Debbie. Nice that you could join. Thank you. What resin? Okay, I'm going to show you my resin. Nobody is allowed to laugh at me. I like a countertop epoxy because I want it to be really hard. I want it to be really durable. And the one that I have found that I like the best is the East Coast resin. And I know not very many people out there are using the East Coast resin. I use it, one, because I like it a lot. The other thing that I like about it, thank you, Robin, is that it has a longer working time, but it's a thicker resin. And I don't know how they make that work, but they do. And it's super, super scratch resistant. It's heat durable, so I can use one resin for everything I do. I don't have to buy 2 or 3 different ones. This tray here, I just poured this afternoon. It's under my deli container. And this was the first coat. And I actually painted under this because I wanted a lot of white. Let me turn it. There we go. So I painted under it. Is it affordable? It is very affordable, Robin. You can order it direct from the company. I typically order mine through Amazon. And I'll send you my Amazon link when I get done here, Robin, or you can get it off of my YouTube channel. Yeah, the resin. The resin is very affordable. But this one, you can see I've done the first layer, and those parts, I don't know if this is, yeah, it's sticky dry. This is actually glitter that I put on under the resin just to define my spaces. So layer 1 is done on this one. And when we get done here, you're welcome, Sky. When we get done here, I'm going to be putting the second layer on it. It has sat for about 5 hours. That's long enough. This is what I just did. If you guys don't know it, my first name is Susan. So that's what the S is. And that is an acrylic pour. And then I put the crystals on top, and I poured the resin on that last night. And this one is a pour painting that I did quite a while ago, and it has hung on my wall forever. And I never did think it was quite enough, so I'm going to add more to it. I mean, you know, more is more. You'd love to see me do one of which, Debbie? The acrylic pours? How do you finish your edges? Okay. When I am working on a piece, like I'm getting ready to pour this one here, I put the tape around it, and I leave the tape on it until I'm completely done. And I let it sit for 24 hours, and then I take the tape off. And then I do my flood coating. And, well, okay, I leave the tape on to put the flood coat on. And then after the flood coat has sat for, I'm going to cover this just a minute again. After the flood coat has sat for about 2.5 hours, I pull the tape off. And I'll show you. Because I saw this on Instagram earlier. Somebody was asking, or not on Instagram, on Facebook. Somebody was asking about that. And I realize this canvas is plain. But when I take my tape off, let me tear this. When I take my tape off and the resin is wet, I start it. And then I pull up and away. So you pull it like this way. And that way your resin doesn't go all over the place. It will stretch because it's still gooey, but it will just naturally go back to where it was. So doing it that way is the easiest I found, so that I get, this one's heavy. See, it makes those nice round edges. You don't end up with a sharp edge. Like this one, I haven't done it. I don't know if you can see that edge. Yeah, there you can. See, it's a hard edge. This one has not been flood coated. This one, you can see how nice and round and soft that edge is. Oh, thank you. Hot Magic Schmooze, what's your real name? I feel bad calling you hot, or should we just call you Hottie? So that's how I do my edges. You're welcome. I'm always happy to answer questions. And you guys, if you have any questions, you can always DM me. You can, I respond to every comment on my posts on Instagram and on my Facebook page. And I do on my YouTube channel as well, but it takes me longer. I'm not on there every day. What kind of wood boards do you like for pouring? I don't use wood boards. I use canvas. Let me show you. Well, this one's all finished and signed. I use canvas. And I do, I I think this one is done. Yes. I do prime front and back. It helps get your canvas tighter. And then when I pour, if my canvas isn't tight enough, which unless it's an 8x8, it never is. Hang on, let me grab this. Sorry about that, guys. I have these pieces of foam core. And what I do with these is when I pour, now this one's not going to fit this canvas because it's not for this size canvas. But I make them so they fit really tight. And then I just tape them in place with some duct tape. And then after your first layer's done, your canvas, or your canvas is hard because it's got resin on it. So, thanks for coming, Sky. I appreciate it. Did you ever get that gold we were talking about? I have not yet. I've gotten so many gifts lately because I've won so much stuff. Don't hate me. I've never won anything until Christmas. I swear. I don't even win $3 on the lottery, you guys, in Christmas time this year. Thank you, Tammy. I'm glad you could make it. I hope you're feeling better. At Christmas this year, I just started winning stuff right and left. But I've won so much stuff that I have a hard time buying anything until I use up some of my supplies. And then for my larger canvases, I'm going to turn here. You can see my mess. For like this size canvas, those are 2x4 canvases. For those, love you, Tam. For the big canvases like this, I actually resin the back of the canvas before I start. And guys, I do that because I live in Iowa, in a rural part of the state. I am roughly an hour from any art store, and we don't have a Dick Blick or any really good art store like that here. So if I get the wood panels, I have to order them. And by the time I order them, they're cost prohibitive. So I've had to learn to work with what I can get. So, and the resin that I use, the East Coast resin, it's actually about a third of the price for me to resin the backs of my big canvases than to try to order wood canvases. So that's how I do it. And honestly, even if you're someplace where you can get wood canvases, if you buy one of the less expensive resins to resin the backs of your canvases, you will save a lot of money in the long run. It doesn't take much. So do we have, oh, thank you, Steph. So do we have any other questions tonight? Is there anything else you want me to show you? Speak right up, girls and boys. How many layers do I use on the back? Just one. And when you do that, I'll show you this. Let me find a canvas that's not, what's this one? Okay. When you do that, you want to, like, I know this is a small canvas. You wouldn't need to resin the back of this one. But when I do it, I make sure that my frame and the canvas itself are on a very flat surface. You can't do this and then lay it aside. Once you do it, it has to stay in that place, not just until the resin is dry, but until it is cured. So you might have to leave your canvas sit in one spot for 3 days. You did that, but it rippled some. Was your canvas frame bent, Robin? Yeah, I tried the Pro Marine resin, and I don't care for it. I just didn't like it. The finish was nice. The working time was okay. But I live in a really small space. I've got 850 square feet here. So that whole thing will just put on a respirator. I can't wear a respirator 24/7. I just can't. And if it's anywhere in the house, you can smell it. Not that you know of. We'll get together and talk later about that, Robin, and see if I can't help you solve that, okay? Did you prime the back of your canvas before you put resin on it? The painter's palette, where do you get your crystals from? Amazon. Here, I'll show you. This is one of my supply drawers. I think you're asking about this size. Is that what you're looking for? Oh, if you stood it up after one day, that's why. And you need to prep the back too. You need to paint the back before you resin it. How do I keep my studio warm? Because of the resin. I turn the heat up. That's all. I've got 850 square feet here. That's my whole place. So turning the heat up doesn't really cost me an arm and a leg. Who was asking about the bigger crystals? Because I also have, where are they at? Here they are. I also have these in the really large sizes, and those I buy at Michael's. See, and those, hang on here. Move crap around. Here's the container they came in. And they're just, let me see if I can focus that. What's the size? In this container, you get a variety of sizes. They have some that are really large. I took them out of there and sorted them all in case you're wondering. See, those are really large. Those are probably 2 inches. And then mixed in with them are these smaller ones. And those I just pick up at Michael's. I think it's $7 for a jar of them, but those are a good size. And then these are roughly an inch. And I buy those on Amazon, and they actually sell them in two sizes. They sell them in the inch and in, I think it's 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. And that's where I get those. My other crushed glass, anything that's in like this, I make those out of marbles. And of course, the Ashlands from Michael's. I buy a lot of Michael's stuff. Yes, I will share that link. I certainly will, as soon as we get done here. You got to run. Okay, thank you for coming. I'm going to cover the lens just a second here. I don't want to move this and make you guys sick to your stomachs. And when I say marbles, I mean round marbles. I just picked these up the other day. The ones that are more the coin shaped, I don't like as well. They don't break as nicely as these. And what I do with these is I will bake them in the oven at 450 degrees for 20 minutes, and then they go into an ice bath. And I do that 3 times before I break them, and they just kind of fall apart. So yeah, these dark blue ones, because this color palette is going to be an entire series of resin paintings. So I'm going to need a lot of blue. So I bought some more. Michael's has strung beads. Really? Do they have any crystals, Robin? I've been looking for the crystals. Stone Coat Resin makes a fast drying quick coat. I have seen their quick coat. I don't know. Are you talking about for the backs of the canvases for the quick coat? Oh, they do have the crystals, Robin. That's a good tip for everybody. Michaels has strung beads 70% off right now. Oh, for the backs of, that might work really well for the backs of the canvases now that you mentioned that. I like that idea. Robin, you might look into that if you're having trouble with your canvases. She says that Stone Coat makes a quick dry resin, which I've seen their quick dry. Thank you for coming. I appreciate having you. And that might be really, really good if you're having trouble getting the backs of it to cure before it, so you can stand it up and get it out of your way. So I was telling everybody earlier that this canvas is my teaser. I have a collaboration coming up, I'll tell you that much. And I'm going to be doing this canvas with some products from the UK. You have some. Okay. You might try that. But yeah, be sure to go ahead and prep the backs of your canvases before you resin them. And for you guys that weren't here earlier, we were talking about, that one's not done. We were talking about prepping the backs of your canvases. So when I prep my canvases, oh, gotta sneeze. When I prep my canvas, hang on, sorry guys. I have really, really bad allergies, and you would think that when it's 45 below flipping zero outside, they wouldn't bother you, but they do. When I prep my canvases, I gesso the fronts. Even if it's a pre-primed canvas, they're not done well. It's cheap primer. So I gesso the fronts, and then I turn them over and I paint the backs. But I don't paint the backs with gesso because gesso's expensive. I save that for the fronts and the sides. The back, I use whatever cheap paint I've got laying around. And typically it is white acrylic. I have a small apartment, so that's now, yeah, I know the feeling. I also have a small apartment. And if you do this, and don't just paint the parts you can see, you really have to get your brush underneath the edge of that wood. And I use a really crappy, cheap old brush to do it. And that gets your canvases really, really tight. See, this canvas is tight. I'm pushing on the backside and it's not even moving. And that will help keep your canvases from sagging as well. And I actually learned that from an instructor years and years ago. And his thought was that if you expect someone to pay you several $100s for a painting, you better make sure that the back looks nice too, because nobody wants to have a pretty front and a crappy back. So that's how I learned it, and I still do it. Where do you get your marbles? How do I break them? My marbles? Oh, the marbles I bake, and I'll bake them, like I said, at 450 degrees for 20 minutes, and then they go directly into ice water, and I do that 3 times. And then I put them in a couple of grocery bags, and by that time they're so cracked that they almost just fall apart. And I just tap them with a hammer, and they just, and tap, because by that time there's so many cracks in them, you don't have to hit them hard. Yeah, I have a small apartment too. We were just talking about resins, and the resin that I use is the East Coast resin because it has almost no smell whatsoever. I mean, it's almost completely odorless. And I like the finish. The finish is super scratch resistant, and I like that. You're welcome, Rob. I'm glad I could help. And if you still have questions, just shoot me a DM later and we'll talk. I'll see if between the two of us we can figure it out. Does anybody else have questions, comments, anything else you would like to see? No? Okay, next time on my live, we are going to be actually doing some resin. We've done two on, we did the first one on how I prep. This one was on composition and color combinations and textures. The next one, we're actually going to pour resin, because I'm really excited to pour resin. So I think that's it for tonight, guys. If you have any questions, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very sweet of you. If you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to direct message me. Which resin do you buy and from where? I was just telling them I buy the East Coast resin, and I buy it from Amazon. I like the durability. It's a thicker resin, but it still has a good working time. So that's the one that I prefer. It's also heat resistant. It's for tabletops. So it's really scratch and heat resistant, and I like it. I like working with it. Can't wait to see me pour. I can't wait to see me pour either, Robin. In case you guys are interested, I do have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. Just search for me as Pour Girl Art, just like here. Also have an Etsy shop, and I'm kind of like, I was watching Alicia's live the other day, and she said, I got to sell some art so I can make some more art, and I'm kind of in the same position. I've got several things on there. I've got several more coming up. So if you're interested in my YouTube or my Facebook, please take a peek. I would appreciate that very much. If you want to see the supplies that I buy, there is an Amazon link on every one of my YouTube videos, so you can see the supplies, my favorite supplies from there. And I think, do I wear a respirator? I do not wear a respirator. I do not. I live in an 850 square foot space, and I can't wear a respirator 24/7. So I use a resin that is 100% safe, so that I don't need to worry about it. Because if I use a smelly, stinky resin, my entire house smells like smelly, stinky resin, and I just don't want to deal with that. That's another reason why I like the East Coast resin. It has almost no odor whatsoever. Your son's allergic? Yeah, I have really bad allergies too. It's really cold here. What's everybody else's weather doing? Because right now, as I'm sitting here talking to you, it's about 45 below where I live. Okay, guys, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Like I said, if you have any questions, just shoot me a DM. I answer all my messages. I answer all my comments. So I'm usually pretty easy to find. Yours is 12. I wish I was still 12. No, actually, I don't wish I was still 12. Yeah. Yikes. Yeah, Robin, yikes is right. It is nasty cold here. They didn't even deliver mail today. It was so cold. You know, when the United States Postal Service stays indoors, it's cold. Oh, thanks, Vicki. Yeah, they're extreme. It's going to warm up again. And welcome to Iowa. By Sunday, it's going to be 50 degrees here, which is unseasonably warm. So, yeah, we get it all. All right, thanks, guys. We will see you soon. Everybody have a good night, and thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it very, very much. Bye.